Yeah.
Okay, and we are live now. Just hold on another second. Check if everything's in order. Just hold on another second. Carolina, you should. Somebody's echoing. Just a sec. Just hold on another second. Yep, Carolina, can you mute your microphone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just checking for the echo again. Okay, appears to be no more echo in the room. That's good. We have 10 people who have joined the broadcast. In the meanwhile, I'm gonna give them a few more seconds to join.
How many people are you expecting, guys?
Around 20, I guess.
Okay, that's good.
There was quite a bit of interest, but we're also delayed 15 minutes, so some people might only just now have realized that the stream is working again.
Okay.
That's why I'm giving them a little more time to join. Those of you who have just joined, we're here at the IFMSA Erasmus Plus webinar, courtesy of the European Youth Forum and Alfonso Alberti. And we're starting in just a bit until I can be sure that everyone who wants to join can join. You're always free to send questions via Google Hangouts, or you can also leave questions in the Facebook group, and I'll be monitoring that in case you, for some reason, cannot leave comments on Hangouts, which I know can be a problem. Okay, we have 16 people online, so I think we can start, and I'll just give it over to you, Alfonso.
Okay, thanks a lot, Reid. Thanks for inviting the Youth Forum to this webinar. Actually, this is not the first time that we do so. This is becoming a kind of tradition with IFMSA to actually present the program to interested members, the Erasmus Plus program. So the way I did it also last years is to do a short general presentation on the program to highlight what are the main features and to try to give some elements on how to read the program opportunities, and then rather give the floor to participants to try to answer specific questions that they might have. So my presentation will be quite short, but please take notes of questions you want to raise, and especially questions that do apply to your specific situation in your specific organization, country, So just feel free really to ask whatever thing. I might not be able to answer to all of those, but I'm sure I'm able to tell you where to find the right answers. So yeah, the Erasmus Plus program, or rather the Erasmus Plus Youth in Action program, and then I will be a little bit clearer on why I focus on the Youth in Action part of the Erasmus Plus, is because the program, do you see actually the slides changing?
I do, yeah.
Okay, then it's good. So do you say it as a full screen now? I'm not an expert of Google Hangouts. That's why I'm asking, guys. I apologize.
It's not full screen, but it's fine.
Okay, fine. So some general information on the Erasmus Plus. It is the European Union program that is covering a wide range of policies, namely education, being higher education, school education, or non-formal education, training, being even vocational training, youth, and this actually covers the work of youth organizations and other organizations working with young people. And last but not least, sport. And this is the first time that sport has a specific place in EU programs. Um, the Erasmus Plus covers a specific time frame as basically all others EU programs. The time frame is 2014-2020, and this is actually what is in jargon called multi-annual financial framework. And this is the framework that is giving, the overall guides to EU expenditures over 7 years period. So after 2020, we might have a new program. And just for your information, here at Youth Forum, our bread and butter, I would say, is advocacy work. So we're preparing to advocate for a new program that would start after 2020. So we will do our best to have the best program ever. So anyway, better than Erasmus Plus, because each program can be improved as from 2021. So the Erasmus Plus program, it combines 7 EU old programs that were operating over the period 2007-2013. These, you might know some of them, one of those being the Youth in Action. Then you might have heard about Leonardo, Comenis, Grundtvig, and the famous Erasmus, because Erasmus as such was just the mobility of higher education students that were going from one university to another to do an exchange, an academic exchange. But now Erasmus Plus is covering much more. The budget of Erasmus Plus is really, really big. It is the second biggest EU program after Horizon 2020, and not considering all the resources going in the so-called cohesion policy, that is resources managed by regions in EU member states. It got an overall increase of 40% on the overall period, and it is on this 7 years, it has a budget of almost 15 billions. So it's quite big. Then the EU is quite ambitious about this. They want to move 4 million people by 2020. Let's see if we'll manage to achieve that. And the initial idea around the merging of all those different programs was to create a kind of systemic impact among the different sectors. We haven't seen this yet, and we see it as one of the shortcomings of the program, and we're calling somehow to find solutions for that. This gives you a little bit of an idea on how this has been integrated in the Erasmus Plus, meaning the old programs. You see on the left-hand side down, there's Youth in Action, and this is where...
Alfonso, yes. The slide didn't change.
Okay, then I'm sorry, the slide didn't change.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, good. So in the left-hand side on the bottom, you see Youth in Action, that was a kind of separate island in the previous program, and now it is embedded in the architecture of the current program. Nevertheless, the Youth in Action has kept somehow some autonomy, so it has a separate chapter, a separate budget line that corresponds to exactly 10% of the overall Erasmus Plus budget. You can see on the screen how the overall budget is split among the different sectors and also on administrative costs somehow. So the biggest bunch goes to education and training. But even there are opportunities for young people, of course, and also for youth organizations, and I would say many for students' organizations as well. I go on with the presentation. These are the priorities of the youth chapter, but this you can easily find on the website of the Erasmus Plus, where you can actually download, and from this year on, you can even surf an online program guide where all the features of the program, including priorities per sector, are actually presented. But there is a lot of focus on youth work, on young people participation, active citizenship, access to right, autonomy. So things that we work as European Youth Forum on quite a lot.
Alfonso?
Yes.
I'm actually going to ask a question on behalf of myself right now.
Yeah.
So this term active citizenship actually gets used a lot in a lot of grants, especially on the EU level.
Yeah.
However, it might be a bit confusing to people. What is actually meant by active citizenship?
Well, let's say that there is no one definition of active citizenship. It is somehow linked to what in the forum we call citizenship education. So let's say it's a set of activities or practices, methods that would enhance participation of citizens or young people in the public life in a very wide sense. Formal institutions, civil society, even informal movements. So to activate citizens to take a role in the social arena. But if you're interested in learning more about that, the European Youth Forum, we recently released a publication on citizenship education with support of major global scholars. And there, you can have some, I hope that you will have a better answer than mine. So we have this resource indeed to try to respond to this.
All right, great, thanks.
You're welcome. Let's say down. Now we go a little bit more on the vision of the Erasmus Plus. We saw, let's say, the policy areas that are covered by the program, but the program itself has a very specific architecture, and it is divided in three main key actions. So we have key action 1.
So you need to change the slide again?
Yeah, key action 1.
And once again?
Yeah.
Or actually, you mean the budget breakdown slide?
Yeah, this.
Okay,
this one.
sorry, then it's the correct one, yeah.
So basically, I was saying it has a very specific architecture. It is divided. Do you see my Skype on the screen, guys?
No.
Okay, that's fine because there are people writing on Skype, so I wanted to be sure, but that this wouldn't in a way disturb our discussion. So I was saying 3 key actions, and then I will explain them in details. Key action 1 is about mobility of individuals. And in these, when we say mobility of individuals, it's literally every kind of individual mobility you may think of. This goes from the Erasmus students' mobility that you might know quite well, to youth exchanges, to European voluntary service, to staff mobility of schools or universities, to youth workers mobility. So it really is about individual mobilities in a very, very wide sense, covering all the policy areas that we saw before. Then, key action 2 is actually an action that is meant to create synergies, to innovate, to exchange good practices within sectors and among sectors. So you can think about, I don't know, in the youth work sector, about projects to exchange practices on how I don't know, youth workers organizations work in deprived areas of big cities, or rather, you can think about something on how organizations can work on new methods to have online participation of young people. So you can really do a lot of things. Key action 3 is meant to give the possibility to stakeholders to establish a dialogue with policymakers. It's a rather small action, but here you can think about projects, to really put in contact young people through their organizations to policymakers at all levels, local, regional, national, and European level. And then there is a very small part that can be reallocated by the Commission to fill, let's say, extra demands in any of those 3 key actions. So it is a kind of buffer that can be used if there are increasing demands on one of those. This is to give you a little bit of flavor of what is a budget for the Erasmus Plus, for an annual budget. 2017 is the first year when the budget is really becoming important, because budget is going up and up until 2020. To give you an example, if you compare the first year of implementation of Erasmus Plus 2013 to the last year, 2020, there is a 40% difference in the level of budget, being 2020 the year with the highest amount of resources in the program. So this year we have more than 2 billions. So it's not 2 point, but it's 2 billions. So it's huge amount of resources. And there is something like more than 200 millions that is going to the youth chapter. The way this resources is managed is primarily at the national level. You might have heard of national agencies in each program country, and then we will see which are the program countries. You have at least one national agency, sometimes you have more, because actually they are focusing on different policy areas. So if you apply in the youth part of the program, you need to make sure that you apply to the national agency in charge of youth. Then, these are a little bit more details on the things that you can do in each key action. Is basically what I told you Key action 1, every type of mobility, being volunteering, youth exchanges, mobility for higher education of students, joint masters, staff mobility. Key action 2 is a bit more, to create this strategic exchange. So you have large scale partnerships between education, training, strategic partnership between youth organizations, education training providers. And key action 3 is more about policy dialogue, dissemination of results and best practices. So this is it. More on the, let's say, details on how we do projects.
Alfonso?
Yes.
For this one, could you perhaps try to make the slide a bit bigger?
Yes, I can.
Maybe just close the notes. And,
can you see it better?
Yeah, this one is much better now, and you can switch to the next slide.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but I'm leaving the presentation then to you, Fred, so you can share it so people can have a look at it. But the information I'm sharing now to you guys, they are all available online. So I'm basically pulling together relevant information, but then, as I said, the interesting part should be your questions, guys.
Yep.
So now this I should make a little bit smaller. So how you do it?
You can also close notes. The bottom part, click to add notes. You can, yeah, that's a bit clearer. Yeah, okay.
Let me see if I can make it bigger now. Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
So basically, you need to register on an online system. It is called ECAS system, where you can actually register your own organization. You will get a PIC number, and this is a kind of serial number that you will need at every stage of your project, starting from the application stage. So you register, you look for partners in other countries, and then you write together the project. You have partnership agreements from them. These are called mandates. And then you apply online on the relevant deadlines that we will see now. Then you submit the application. Usually takes between 4 or 5 months to have the notification or the award decision. And then you sign the contract, you start the implementation, you finish the project, you report back, and the project, the cycle is closed. Then I will be very happy to answer if you have any question regarding that, and I hope you have. So, with which countries you can work? Program countries, and here you have EU and some non-EU countries, Macedonia, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Turkey. They are non-EU program countries, so you can fully work with them, plus all other EU countries. In addition to that, there are 3 more opportunities for the youth sector to work. One with Western Balkan countries. This is called the Western Balkan Youth Window, where you can actually have projects coming from organizations of that region. The second one has been introduced this year, and is to give a possibility to organizations coming from the so-called Eastern Partnership to apply for grants. And then there is a third opportunity under Key Action 2, capacity building in the field of youth, to work with so-called third countries. And third countries are, I would say, 95% of countries around the world. There are some exceptions I don't recall by heart, but basically you can safely say that you can work with all countries around the world. And there is only one deadline for those. I'm going now to the deadlines. I'll make it smaller. Key action 1. So I said in the field of youth, you can do youth exchanges, training, networking for youth workers, EVS. You have 3 deadlines a year, 2nd of February, 26th of April, and 4th of October. And this year, there are some new features under the European Voluntary Service. There is something called strategic EVS that would allow organization to actually plan in a more free and strategic way the sending of volunteers across countries. And this would be very, very useful for European NGOs or international NGOs who want to apply for long-term EVS projects and saying, over 3 years, we want to send in our network 40 volunteers. You don't need to identify partners beforehand. You don't need to identify volunteers beforehand. But once your project is approved, you can start sending volunteers around. You only need to identify the countries in which you want to send volunteers. Then, key action 2, we have strategic partnership, and this is really to build stronger partnerships, but you need to have a quite wide different range of partners. So I wouldn't suggest organizations to work with members or partners from their own network, because this action is meant to establish partnerships with other organizations. Deadline, same as before, 2nd of February, 26th of April, 4th of October. And then you have capacity building in field of youth, that is for working with known program countries. I mentioned the Western Balkan Youth Window, the Eastern Partnership Youth Window, and working with other regions of the world. And in this capacity building field of youth, you can do basically all the things that you saw in Key Action 1, but you can put them all together. So in a project, you can have 1, 2, 3 youth exchanges, a mobility of youth workers, some EVS going around, trainings for the people of the network, so you can be really creative. And then you have Key Action 3, that is about meetings between young people and decision makers. And here they are really looking for organizations that are able to bring around the table decision makers that, I don't know, in a country or at the local level, you can imagine that you would work with a local authority that is developing some piece of legislation or a new program that is relevant for young people. So you want to work with them to have young people consulted or included in this process. So this is the kind of projects that the Erasmus Plus wants to fund. Same deadlines. And then last but not least, every year you have some specific, here I put a jargon, CFPs. This is call for proposals that are opened at the European level. You find them on the EACHEA, that is the executive agency website, and this is meant for more, really large European projects to innovate in the way we can advance policy agenda in the areas covered by the Erasmus Plus. So at the moment, there are a couple of calls open, one being something called forward-looking projects. There is an info day organized soon by the executive agency on that you can follow online. I think it's next week. I don't recall by heart. And voila, I think that's it. I hope that the information I gave were not too complex. But really now I expect that you have more questions about how you can actually use the program. So yeah, feel free to ask questions.
Okay, I'm also unmuting my microphone now. So everyone, you can ask questions using the group chat. You can also send something to the Facebook group or email me directly, rdeurope@ifmsa.org, if the first two options didn't work for you. About the questions, so there's 3 main key actions, and I was wondering if there's like a particular key action which is the most accessible for a youth organization, especially for an organization who's quite new to Erasmus Plus, because most of our members actually are.
Sorry, I mute my mic. I didn't realize. So yes, there is a key action, especially let's say for newbies, definitely key action 1. So in key action 1, you can have this youth exchanges, but you can be very, very creative on the topics of the youth exchanges. And you can have EVS. I remember that at one point you were kind of discussing to see if you could have many IFMCA members that would be accredited as EVS receivers or sending or hosting organizations. So if you are interested in that, this is the time to do it, because budget for EVS is going dramatically high. You probably heard an initiative called European Solidarity Corps.
Yep.
This is not a new program yet. It's just an initiative where the Commission is putting 2 hats to already existing initiatives, one being the European Voluntary Service. So European Voluntary Service will keep its EVS hat and will be adding this Solidarity Corps hat. Therefore, they are investing more on the EVS. So go for it. And if you have capacity, try this strategic EVS, that it's new, but would give you the opportunity to have a lot of individual long-term individual mobilities in your network, so that you can have this exchange, in your network. People going from one local organization to the other across Europe, and I don't know if this might be interesting for you. But if you are a newbie, go for the Youth in Action, Key Action 1. If you are a newbie, try to be included as partner in more experienced consortium to go for Key Action 2. A tip that I could give to you is go on a national agency website, check who were the successful organizations in Key Action 2 in the previous years, and start contacting them saying, "Hi guys, are you interested in being, are you looking for partners? Are you applying to a key action 2? And if you are lucky, you would find successful applicants, and this would help you in building this knowledge to then one day apply yourself to more ambitious projects that are mainly in key action 2.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have a lot of questions from our members. Just a quick clarification. So you mentioned that we should maybe go for European voluntary service. So European voluntary service, even with between members of IFMSA, would be okay for the program?
Yes, now it will be okay because, if I can be very frank with you, they are over investing in it, and they need organizations to implement it. So, and if you go for the strategic EVS, that this is the first year that is happening, so it's a kind of testing thing also for the national agencies. They don't need to know which are your partners hosting the EVS. They will know this after. So you apply as the international or European organization. You say, I am applying for a project of 2 years, and over these 2 years, I commit to send 40 EVS in those 8 countries. But you don't need to tell them which are your hosting organizations. You will tell them after. And after, you need to make sure that the organizations receiving the EVS are actually accredited. But it seems that they're starting to revise the accreditation procedure to make it much faster for the political reasons I told you, that they need quantity in the number of volunteers that are going around.
Okay, good. That's good information. So a question from our members is the difference between Key Action 1 and Key Action 2. Is it basically just the scale and the scope of interest?
Yes and no. Let's say that Key Action 2, it's a little bit. So Key Action 1 is focusing on the individuals, whereas Key Action 2 is focusing on the organizations, meaning that the idea there of Key Action 2 is to fund organizations so that they will grow and they will be able to reach out to more young people, to promote the program, and so on and so forth. And in Key Action 2, there is also a small budget for the management of the project, let's say. For these reasons, it is extremely competitive. So if you are a newbie, go first for Key Action 1, even though Key Action 2 might seem more appealing. But you can go on, but you will see that the success rate, it's very, very low. Whereas with Key Action 1, you might easily, well, I shouldn't say easily, but you might have good chances of getting grants.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So questions from member states outside of the program country. So would you know about, for instance, Bosnia and Herzegovina? How can they benefit from the Erasmus Plus program?
As I said, since last year, there is a so-called Western Balkan Youth Window that is included in the Key Action 2 capacity building in the field of youth. So I should say something that basically to work outside the EU, you need to use Key Action 2, but this Key Action 2 is still very much accessible because there is a Key Action 2 strategic partnership that it is really appealing for very, very experienced organizations. And there is a key action too that is called capacity building in the field of youth. And this is basically to do the same things you do in key action 1, but for non-EU countries. I know that is quite weird and strange, but this is the way they structured it. So if you want to work with Bosnia and Herzegovina, you should work under Key Action 2, Capacity Building in Field of Youth, and use a strand that is called Western Balkan Youth Window. And there is only one deadline a year, and it's the 8th of March. And you can do a youth exchange, you can do EDS, you can do mobility of youth workers, basically the same thing as EU organizations. So yeah, that's the thing.
And does this also apply to Eastern Partnership countries?
From this year on, this applies also for Eastern Partnership countries. Well, it's a little bit different. They have kind of strange actions, but it's possible to make projects of youth organizations to move young people around. And the interesting part is that it is like organizations from the regions that are signing contracts and receiving directly resources to implement it. So this is very good.
Okay, so like for countries like Armenia and Azerbaijan and Georgia, they can use the Eastern Partnership window.
Yeah, they can use that part. Of
countries like Bosnia, Kosovo, Montenegro, Serbia can use the Western Balkan Youth Window.
Exactly. And Eastern Partnership Youth Window is 8th of March, the first time ever in the Erasmus Plus. We had it in the past. We had problems to put it in place, but political problems at the highest level. But now it's solved. So it will be a kind of test. So guys, if you then apply and you have feedback, feel free to share them so that we can address those concerns to the relevant institutions.
Okay, so next question. So imagine there is an event for peer-to-peer non-formal education with more than 60 participants or even 80 participants on 4 workshops. So like 100 students, up to 100 students. What kind of fund would apply to organize an event like that?
Well, the best would be Key Action 2, but for the reasons I mentioned, this doesn't, it's a bit competitive. But you can explore Key Action 1 to do that as a youth exchange. But being very, very careful in the way you present your activity. It shouldn't be a formal education activity. You said non-formal education.
Yes.
So this is very good. And you should check the maximum number of participants. I don't recall, but there is a maximum number of participants. Well, what you could do is actually apply for 2 different projects and combine them the 2.
Okay.
So that you can bring 50 people with one project and 50 people with another one, with 2 different organizations applying for it, and making sure that you don't do the so-called double funding. But Matti to explain this even bilaterally if you manage to get the 2 projects.
Okay. And perhaps a bit of a difficult question for you. Do you think it would be possible to apply for some kind of a student movement fund to support delegates coming to IFMSA General Assemblies?
No, I don't think, no, because this is covered or should be covered. This is called, how to say, what do you call them? Like, no, how you call them? The
You mean the structure?
statutory meetings.
Yes, that's true.
Is the statutory meetings of an organization. And those are should be covered by the operating grant. I know that the operating grant is small and it doesn't fully cover that. What you could try to do though is to foresee an activity that might be, might be implemented close to your General Assembly, can be a youth exchange, but it should last at least 4 days and so on and so forth. And then you can, try to combine that. But you should be careful the way you do things because in case of audit, they might say you're using resources to also cover something that should be covered by your operating grant. And they might say this is double funding. But if you do it well, you're not breaking any rules, but you're just making a clear difference between the two events and you wouldn't have any problem. So, how to say, there are rules, but the rules are made in a way, and this is made on purpose, that you can play with them. And I mean, this is the reality.
Yeah.
But if you don't feel familiar or if you don't feel comfortable with that, meaning that you don't feel that you, how to say, that you have fully control and understanding of those procedures, don't do it.
Yeah. Okay. For the what I was going to ask. Oh yeah. So we have quite a number of countries here who aren't program countries. So I just wanted to specify if it's, for instance, a Western Balkan country or an Eastern Partnership country, when they're organizing an Erasmus project, do they need to have a partner that is from a program country?
Yes, they do.
So definitely they would need to have some kind of a collaboration from someone in the program.
But they will be the ones, completely leading the project. So it's not that they are asking a European organization to take the lead on their project. They are leading the project, but they need to have a partner from the EU.
Yeah, so it's basically someone to say that we are partnering with this project.
Yeah.
Okay. And for key action 2, because for strategic partnerships, you mentioned that the organizations would have to be quite different, that we can't really use the same network. However, if it's, for instance, this Western Balkan window, can they be in the same network, which is also key action 2?
Yeah. They can. I mean, meaning it's different from the strategic partnership. But I would encourage you to always try to include organizations from, different networks, and this is perceived as a positive thing by the evaluators, because one of the overall objectives of the program is to foster what they say what they call cross fertilization or something like this. That is, creating synergies between different movements. So it is perceived in a positive way. But it's written nowhere that you're not allowed to apply if you are all part of the same large network, because at the end of the day, you are all autonomous, independent, legal entities in your own country.
Yeah, definitely. And would, for instance, a a medical students association collaborating with a youth council, would that count as different networks or the same network?
No, different networks, and it is, I think that they will value this.
Okay. Currently, we don't have additional questions from the members. You still have the chance to ask questions because I will be keeping Alfonso on the line a bit because I have some questions from other people which would need to be clarified. One question is that if, for instance, an organization does a key action 1, which is the most accessible one, then they can do a project with youth mobility. So, for instance, they can bring people into their country or they can send people to other countries. But is there something else that the organization can gain, some kind of monetary support from organizing an Erasmus project?
So you asking if you can get some support as an organization, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the way projects. Well, let's talk about budgets. Okay. So let's say to do a random mobility youth exchange of 30 people. I don't have a calculator with me. Yeah? Let's just be creative. Let's say to do a youth exchange of 1 week in X country, the commission gives you 25,000 euros. Okay. Basically, you can spend these 25,000 euros as you wish, knowing that you commit to bring 25 people in X country for X days. Okay? Then, if you're good in managing resources, or perhaps if you have local support, like you have free accommodation for whatever reason, okay, what you save, you can use it to support the functioning of your organization. Why? Because the budget of the Erasmus Plus, in 90% of the budget is based on lump sum unit costs. So this means that the Commission has made an estimation of how much this would cost, okay? So they rely on their studies and they say, to us, this project would cost 25,000. Then they might have organizations that to do that will spend less or will spend more. But overall, they say, and they're not going to ask you for receipts. You see, of course, in case of audit, you as an organization, you have your own, accountancy, whatever. But if you save 3,000 euros, you can buy 2 laptops for your office. There are cases of some countries where national agencies, they don't understand this rule, so that they are asking actually receipts, but they are going against the law. So you should raise that. And there is a very clear law, that is a European law, is called EU Financial Regulation. It actually regulates all EU funds, all EU expenditures, and it is very, very clear. It says that projects that are based on lump sum unit cost, to those projects, the non-profit rule does not apply. Because normally in EU grants, you have a rule that is called the non-profit rule, meaning that you cannot make profit. But in this case, you could potentially make profit, but I can tell you that it's very difficult to make some profit. So if you're very good in managing the resources you receive, you might save something to then be used to support your own organization. Of course, You don't make, share. You're not a company that you are sharing, I say, shares, because this is against the law, national laws.
Mm. But
But
what about? Oh, you
yes,
so you want to continue?
no. It's that.
Okay, so I just wanted to. What about something like coordination fees, for instance? Because I have heard of those existing within.
Well, there is something in key action too, but not in key. You mean for partners?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're organizing, for instance, an
No,
exchange.
no. There's no such a thing. Let's say again that you calculate your budget
Mhm.
according to the application of the Erasmus Plus. You have a total amount, but then with that total amount, you can decide to divide it as you wish. You're not obliged to say, okay, I calculated the budget, 10,000 is for travels, because it might be that you will only spend 7,000 for travels, or you might, so you don't need to respect the budget lines that you use to calculate it in the application. So then it's up to you also to see if you want to give something to your partners. You see, so this is something that you manage internally in the consortium. The commission is just telling you, guys, we estimate that to do your project, we give you this. Then deliver on what you committed. So moving 20 people from year to year for X days on this topic.
Mhm. Okay. So a few of our members, especially who are new to the Erasmus Plus program, are saying that filling all these application forms can be quite complicated. Is there a way for them to get help in this?
Well, help should come from peers that have experienced already the drafting of it, because no one will somehow help you. If you ask your national agency, they might do like info days every year or things like this. So check on their website if you're doing something. The other thing is that sometimes you have organizations that are organizing, like drafting seminars on Erasmus Plus programs. At the European Youth Forum, unfortunately, we don't do that. We rather focus on the overall advocacy on the program to make sure that we have overall more money for it. But we couldn't afford to do, specific session on drafting projects for all our members and members of members. But check out or start working with organizations that already have experience in doing it and learn from them.
Yeah, and a way to do that is see which organizations have already
Yeah.
been funded by the
Yeah,
program.
word of mouth, but also looking at organizations that have been already funded. I don't know, you might have some sister students organization, I don't know, that might have more experience than you. I have no clue, but just think in your among your partners, who is very well experienced, approach them, tell them you want to work with them, and start slowly if you're a newbie, and at one point after a year, I'm sure you would be able to write your own project. And if you want to do it now, I'm sure you would do it as well. Yeah, I know it's quite complicated. It's a lot of jargon, a lot of blah blah blah. Or another thing that you can do is to ask some partners to share with you past successful applications if you have reliable partners. And there you can understand what kind of jargon is used, what kind of blah 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 is used. Because I'm sorry, guys, to be so frank with you, but I think that this is the space to say these things. so that you can, learn how to use the keywords, the words that evaluators want to hear. So from a successful application, you can learn a lot of stuff.
Okay. So the non-profit rule exemption you mentioned, this applies regardless of key action, right?
Yeah, well, as long as the budget is calculated on lump sum unit cost. I'm saying this because, for instance, there are some costs that are based on what is called real costs, like exceptional costs for people with disabilities, or there are some exceptional costs. Those costs you need to report with invoices, and there the non-profit rule applies. Whereas in all the other budget lines where lump sum unit costs, are based to calculate are used to calculate the budget, there the non-profit rule does not apply.
Okay. Is there a cap for funding for key action 1 and key action 2? Like how much funding you can ask for key action?
Yes, there is a maximum. For key action 2 strategic partnership, I think that is 150,000 euros a year. And for key action 1, it's linked to the number of people. So let's say that there is not a formal maximum. There might be a formal maximum of people that you can mobilize. And on that basis, there is also a formal maximum of budget.
Okay. All right. Currently, we do not have questions from members.
But guys, what I can tell you is really start applying. And are you going to put this online somewhere?
Yes,
where everyone can everyone can watch it? Okay,
yep.
Then I won't say it.
Okay.
No, well, what I wanted to say is look for successful projects and really take them as inspiration for your projects. And it's an easy way to start drafting successful applications. And
Okay.
Ask around to other organizations if they want to share their experience with you or their successful projects with you.
We have another question coming up soon. That person is formulating the question right now. What I wanted to ask was, so you mentioned that there's the youth chapter and that there's, we should be applying in the youth chapter, but are there other chapters that would be relevant to youth organizations?
Yeah, well, the education one, for especially students' organizations, because they are somehow very much linked with formal education. So you could explore there. And what I can tell you is that often in Key Action 2, there are, let's say, organizations that are active in the formal education field that are looking for organizations like yours. And therefore, you could also see or look for successful applicants in the education field and approach them, saying what your specificities are as students' organization.
Okay. Still waiting for the question.
Can you see my face, guys?
Wait, let me just look.
No, it's just because there is a colleague annoying me from outside the room and I'm laughing. So
No, I only see the slide. Okay.
Wait a sec. Just a second, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Sono qui dietro 5.
Sì, ci vediamo, ma vediamoci con calma.
Sì, ti scrivo oggi o domani. Sono qui.
Okay.
Possiamo fare una video. Quindi,
sorry, guys. It was one of the former vice president of the Youth Forum passing by, and I wanted to say hello. That's it.
Okay.
Office life.
Okay, so about the Eastern Partnership window, which is within Key Action 2, then, right?
Yeah.
Capacity building in the field of youth.
Yeah.
Okay. Apparently, it's mentioning something that the allocation of funds, that 60% of funds are going to civil society fellowships for youth, and then 40% to partnership for entrepreneurship. What does this mean?
Okay, so we had a discussion with the Commission on that. When they think about entrepreneurship, it's very, very large thing. So for them, entrepreneurship is also civil society, youth organizations. So in a way, to support it's a political priority in the region. They want to support activism in civil society of young people. So if you want to work with the Eastern Partnership, you should also have a strong dimension of youth participation, the fact that young people are taking lead on processes or movements or organizations. And then these fellowships are for mobilities, but you can use it also for the like exchanges and stuff like that. It has a strange name, but this is somehow what you can do.
Okay. So entrepreneurship actually could also mean, being active in civil society.
Yes,
doing
definitely.
What your organization does.
Yeah, well, there is a formal definition of entrepreneurship of the European Commission, and this includes civil society.
Okay. All right.
So you can go and look for this definition and perhaps use it when you draft your application.
Yeah. Good. So we still have room for more questions if you have any. I'll give you a window to formulate any questions you might still have by asking, how is the reporting burden on Erasmus Plus?
Well, in terms of financial reporting, it's quite easy, quite straightforward, because as I explained, with this budget calculation is quite straightforward. Then you have something similar to the application form that you need to fill in. You need to give information on your participants. They want to know who are them and things like this. So they are quite detailed on that. You need to prove them that the activity happened, like agenda, like to tell them that. But then you need to respond to a series of questions that are quite similar to the application form. So it's not huge, but it's not tiny either. And the experience of beneficiaries varies, even though procedures are more or less the same, varies a lot across countries, because you might have some national agencies that are very, very picky and others that are a little bit more easygoing. So there is no one experience. It's quite different.
Okay. So I do not see any more questions on any of the channels. So I think we're gonna end it here. and this webinar is recorded, so it's in like a couple of hours the video will have processed, and then it will be readily available for anyone watching at a later time. Okay, so there is still one more question. So would it still be in the bounds of the same Eastern Partnership program to organize training sessions and workshops which include student movement across multiple countries?
Yeah, well, this is what we understood and we told that we would do, I mean, that organization could do. But as I said, this is the first deadline of it. And in a way, we understand this is possible, but then we would need also organization feedback to say, look, we tried, they said no. So yes, but in case you receive strange feedback from the executive agency, that is the one in charge of it, let us know.
Okay, so essentially it should be possible, it should be within the Civil Society Fellowship for Youth, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But if for some reason this isn't accepted by your agency, then do let us know and we'll give feedback to the Commission on that.
Exactly.
All right. So apparently no more questions. If you think of questions later on, feel free to send them to us, for instance, to this address that I am typing right now. Hold on, I'm still learning to type on a Mac. Okay, there you go. Okay, essentially it's finance.europe@ifmsa.org. That's Carolina's address, and we will try to answer as many questions as you have. Otherwise, this is it for now. Huge thanks to Alfonso for the second time. It's been a real pleasure, and perhaps again next time then.
Thank you, guys, and indeed apply for projects. It's the only way, to get them, and really go for it. There is a lot of money available, and go. Really.
All right. So go, people.
Yeah.
Make money, do projects. Goodbye.
Bye. Ciao.